welcome back to another Torah portion discussion. We swapped sides here, so...
Where you at, Abe?
Yeah,
there you are.
It's like we can exercise the other side of our necks now, and we can, you know... It's one of those things. You don't get into too much of a habit, because that develops cricks. So we had
I thought they were ruts. Now they're creeks.
Well, some people say it like that.
Oh.
Mostly where I grew up too as well. But anyway, so we had a double portion this week, and it took us to the end of end of the book of Exodus. Mm-hmm. And it was a lot of construction of the temple.
Yeah.
Or the tabernacle.
Yeah. I love construction.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get to put all the pieces together and make it into one.
Yeah. It's like a Lego set.
Yeah.
Legos are fun.
Really shiny Lego set.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I mean, you had silver in the stuff around, the curtains around the courtyard. You had silver hooks and all those kinds of things, right? And,
yeah.
And then the curtains themselves, of course, were very pretty. And then you had the tabernacle itself, and they upgraded the gold at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So with your gold filigree and your gold hooks and those kinds of things.
And the gold woven into the curtains.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
For the cherubim.
Gold 30. Can you imagine? So I only noticed this when I was just reading this today, that they beat out the gold and then cut it into threads.
Yeah.
Which I never really thought about. How do you make gold thread, especially 3,500 years ago. And that sounds tedious. I got to say, that sounds like a lot of work.
That sounds very European of you. That they didn't know how to do these things 3,500 years ago.
I don't know really what he's trying to say with this, but I suspect it's some kind of, he's going to have like, I don't know, what are other European digs?
Oh, well, the European idea of we're going to civilize the world.
Oh, I see.
And if you don't live like Europeans, then you're not civilized. It was the attitude they had toward the natives in North America.
Just because I made you wear pants.
Lest we get off on too much of a rabbit trail here. Excuse me, deer trail. Rabbits aren't kosher. Well, you know what? One of the most exciting things in this portion that I come to, 2 weeks ago, I think it was, we had the instructions that whoever wholeheartedly wants to give, you're to accept a contribution from them.
Yeah.
Okay. And in 3520, the whole community, the people of Israel, withdrew from Moshe's presence, and they came, everyone whose heart stirred him, and everyone whose spirit made him willing, and brought out an offering for the work in the tent of meeting, for the service in it, and the holy garments. Both men and women came, as many as had willing hearts. And it describes what they brought. Okay, it's very interesting that it specifies both men and women came.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't exclusive. It was.
Yeah.
Everybody can participate in building this thing, which becomes the golden heart of Israel.
Right. Everybody was, and likewise the women whose hearts stirred them, I'm in verse 26, to use their skill, spun the goat's hair. Everybody had a piece in this. And verse 29, thus every man and woman of the people of Israel whose heart impelled them to contribute to any of the work Adonai had ordered through Moshe, brought it to Adonai as a voluntary offering. And what happened? We've got a bunch of people. Let's be sure that we understand the stage here. We got a bunch of people that have been living as slaves in Egypt.
Yeah.
and the plagues poured out. And they had a real rough night one night, and they got up in the morning, and Egypt's telling them, "You get out, get." And 3 days out, they're being chased down by the army, and they got a sea in front of them that the water's walled up on both sides, and they're kind of terrified. And they go through the sea, and they're carrying all their loot with them, and they're bugging out, and they don't know how to bug out. They weren't trained to do this. They're just taking what they can carry, and they get to Mount Sinai, and there's this giant voice that's coming down and scaring the calf out of them. They have the golden calf incident, which, God didn't think too much of that. And now we're here.
Mm-hmm.
They're bringing what they have, whether it be earrings or nose rings or skills. They're bringing what they have. And the people come to Moses and they're going, "We got too much."
Yeah.
An evangelist's dream. Hey guys, quit bringing the gold in. We have too much.
Yeah, this is one of those good problems to have.
When I read this, and yes, the rabbinic teaching on the representation of what the tabernacle and temple meant helped mold this. But just reading from the word here, the tabernacle would not have happened without Israel's participation.
Mm-hmm.
The tabernacle represented Israel's ability to come together for Adonai's sake.
Yeah, and voluntary participation too. Let's
Voluntary
remember that.
participation, yes, absolutely. Nobody browbeat them.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't any fleecing of the flock going on here.
Yeah.
It was, "Hey guys, we need to do this so God can live among us." And they're going, "Yeah, we're on board."
Yeah.
The tabernacle represents the unity of Israel, as the temple eventually represented the unity of Israel. And as we go through the instructions here, I see so much of this revealed. I mean, I'm not going to etch this one in stone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if pun was intended there or not, but they came together, and they had 10 sheets of finely woven linen.
Yeah.
And with the cherubim worked into that. And each of these sheets were, I'm sure they were very grand and very beautiful. And then you join 5 together, and you join 5 together, and you support each one by 50 loops. Okay, what if you don't have those 50 loops holding those sheets? What happens to the sheet?
Oh, they don't hold together.
They don't hold. They're laying on the ground.
Yeah.
They're no longer grand. There's not that much to them. Each piece of this had to be in its place and supported. Now, to me, the idea that there were 10 sheets and 50 loops is speaking to me about the leaders of hundreds, 50s, and 10s, and showing how we're supposed to work together as a unit. Not the whole purpose of the leaders wasn't to lord over people. It was to unify and have a functional unit.
Yeah, it was from the portion Jethro where
Yes.
Moses' father-in-law sees he's overworked and says, "You need help." And start delegating and set up leaders of 10s, leaders of 50s, leaders of hundreds, and leaders of thousands.
And in chapter 36, verse 13, he made 50 fasteners of gold and coupled the sheets to each other with the fasteners, so that the tabernacle formed a single unit. I mean, it actually says what I'm envisioning here is that the fasteners of gold were there so that it formed a single unit.
Yeah.
And then it's mentioned again in verse 18. He made 50 fasteners of bronze to join the tent together so that it would be a single unit. This is how we're supposed to come together.
I remember, what was it, 3 weeks ago, somewhere there, when we first started getting into the instructions for the tabernacle.
Mm-hmm.
And then one thing that we talked about was that everybody has a job to do. I mean, that's the lesson that we can sort of like read into it, let's say, where, okay, some people are a curtain, some people are beautiful menorah, a candlestick, shining light, or a part of that. Some people are a tent peg.
Yeah, just the blockheads, though.
The blockheads are... Leonard thinks he's a tent peg, I think. Don't mind him. So you have boards and you have the sockets that they set in. And it's like you need all of these pieces serving each their own purpose to make this complete whole.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the lesson that we took home from that was when you have a community like what we have a community, and there are some people that are good for teaching. There's some people that are good for visiting. There's some people that are good for bringing people together to do a barbecue or whatnot. I mean, there's different purposes that we each bring to the table. We have several people that are extraordinarily good in music.
Yes.
And so everybody brings that kind of purpose. And so I think what you're doing here is you're taking and extending the analogy just a little bit and saying, hey, look, conveniently, there are 10 curtains that are looped together. And on the edges of these 10 curtains, there are also 50 loops that hold it all together. And those are the first two numbers that we have for the organization of, politically, I guess, or leadership-wise, the camp of Israel. You had groups of 10 and groups of 50.
Now, I really wish that held true throughout the rest of the tabernacle, and I could etch that one in stone.
Yeah.
I can't.
No. Yeah.
But it spoke to me.
Yeah.
Maybe it was because of the pizza I had last night. I'm not sure.
Well, I think it's okay to take and learn things from the Bible that are not like, okay, this is doctrine,
Right.
But no, it's like, hey, this inspired me to think about that unity.
Right.
And about the, about the leaders that work to hold the pieces of our community tabernacle, together.
Right. And the way that we're supposed to, once we establish that, the way it's supposed to look and how it's supposed to function. And it's not it's what's the word? A symbiotic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
The leadership and those that they're leading need each other for it to work.
Oh, yeah.
And now the one thing that I want to point out here, was this so that everybody could walk to the middle of the camp and see how grand the tabernacle was? What was the purpose of the tabernacle in the first place?
It was a house of God, or house for God.
Yeah, a place where he could dwell among them.
Well, yeah, in their midst.
Now, it was grand, but its grandeur was not its purpose. And I say that to bring to the point that the reason we need to learn how to work together and build that community isn't so we can go, hey guys, we did it right.
Mm-hmm.
It's so God can dwell among us.
Yeah.
The grandeur that happens is a byproduct that should not be our focus. The thing that should be our focus is we need Hashem to dwell among us.
Yeah.
Because we need that in our lives. We need that close enough to us that we know that we know that we know. And I don't have better words for that.
Well, that does lead to an interesting little note just right at the end of Exodus here, when they finished all this work, so the end of chapter 40,
Mm-hmm.
and starting in verse 34, it's talking about the glory of the Lord. And then the cloud covered the tent of meeting. Because remember, when they were leaving Egypt and they were
yes.
fleeing the Egyptians, you had a pillar of cloud going in front of them by day, and you had a pillar of fire by night.
Right.
And that, when the Egyptians trapped them, that moved in between them and the Egyptians to give them time to go through. It's God, okay? It's, I mean, I think we pretty much all understand that is God.
I grew up in Kansas. I spent a lot of time in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a pillar in the sky, you know that it's God.
Yeah, there's an act of God happening there somewhere.
In case you missed it, I'm talking about the F5 tornadoes.
Right. that particular pillar of cloud is like going to the cellar.
That's the finger of God.
Yeah. Any case, for chapter 40, verse 34, and then this is right after they get finished building the tabernacle. And then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud settled on it. And the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And throughout all their journeys, whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the people of Israel would set out. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not set out until the day that it was taken up. And for the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day, and the fire was by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. So it's talking about, the Shekinah, I think it's called, right? Or Shekinah, one or the other.
It's pronounced both ways.
And which is the light of God filling the temple, like visibly filling the temple.
Right.
And a light and a cloud. And besides that, I think it's interesting too that they came and went based off of this.
Right. They came and went into the tabernacle based off this.
Mm-hmm.
They packed up their stuff and moved based off of this.
Yeah.
How exciting would it be that you don't have to ponder, is it time to move?
Mm-hmm.
I think I've been here long enough. It's time to move. I don't have to ponder it. Oh, wow, the pillar's moved. Hey, guys, pack up. It's time to go. Well, what way we're going? I don't know. Follow the pillar.
Yeah.
No questions. Follow the pillar.
Yeah. It kind of made it a little easier.
Yeah.
But, I think it ties into something we were talking about last week, where we were talking about a lot of times people ask God for strength to do something.
Yes.
Often people neglect to ask God if they should be doing something.
Yeah, that gets us in trouble.
Yeah. And I see that reflected in here. It's like, because as long as the cloud is there, you're staying put. I mean, you're supposed to be wandering in the wilderness, right? Well,
6 months into your mortgage, you're going, oh my God, you set this all up for me. You got to help me pay this mortgage. And you hear in the back of your head, did you ask me before you signed it?
Right.
You just assumed because somebody let you sign it, you were supposed to.
Yeah. It is really good to ask God about those questions, though, and to involve Him in that. I did that a lot so I'm married now, and in meeting my wife, and yes. We had a courtship, and went through all of that stuff, and throughout it all, we were both asking God separately. We didn't know that of each other at the start, but we were both asking God separately, is this the person you want me with? And if so, help it happen. And if not, then stop it.
Yes.
And I think that was key. It's like something that I advise to people now. It's like, take that approach.
Well, and this wasn't where I intended on going today, but this is really good because we're talking about Israel had the guidance of God with the pillar, Israel as a nation.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about is guidance as an individual, which is still good.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to work on our corporate unity
Mm-hmm.
But the amazing thing that we do have is that we have God's leadership as individuals. And I know that there's going to be people listening to this that are going, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
How do you do that? And the only thing that I can think of right now was the thing that strengthened King David when he faced Goliath. Well, he wasn't king then.
Yeah.
He was Boy David.
Boy David, yeah.
When he faced Goliath. God's delivered me from the lion and bear, and he'll deliver me from this Philistine as well. If we never trust him in the little things,
Yeah.
we won't know how to listen to him in the big things.
Yeah.
So, and I'm offering my perspective here. Is it simply a matter of we need to practice throughout our life trusting in God and asking him questions on the little things, and then evaluate, are we listening to the pizza that we ate at 2 o'clock in the morning, or are we listening to God?
Mm-hmm.
So that when it gets to the big things, we'll know his voice. As Yeshua said, my sheep know my voice.
Yeah.
I remember one time it was not intended this way. We were in a Bible study and somebody spoke up and said, well, how do you know if you're listening to God or not? And my ex spoke up and said, well, he says my sheep will know my voice. So if you don't know his voice, maybe you're not his sheep. And I'm sitting there listening to this, and she didn't intend that as harshly as it sounded. This is one time I will support her in that. It was not intentional how it sounded, but it sounded extremely harsh.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was spot on. Because we don't practice speaking to God and letting him speak to us. And if we don't do that on an individual level, and we're not working together on a national level or a communal level, then we're just out here blowing in the wind.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about what that actually looks like for a second.
Mm-hmm.
It's prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, reading the Bible and stuff like that too. But it's praying, and it's having a conversation with God on a regular basis.
Yes.
And I personally mean it like that. Like, talk to God. Have a conversation with him. There's, at some point in the past, I struggled with how do you pray. Fortunately, Christ, gives us a template to start with the Lord's Prayer. But the notion of how do you pray, like being very, very concerned about that, comes from, or at least in my case, it came from, what do you want to call it? Like magical thinking, maybe. It's like, if you say the right words, then you get what you want.
Yeah. Prayer is not a magical incantation.
Right. We are not casting a spell here. Well, if we're not casting a spell, then what are we doing?
And God's not a genie to provide for all of our wants.
Right. Exactly. So, so if we're not casting a spell here, then what are we doing? Well, we are building a relationship with our Creator.
Right.
And with, if you read, the church is the bride of Christ, with our husband.
Right. And I think of, okay, now you're going to make what I was going to say weird. Paul talks about pray without ceasing.
Yeah.
And throughout the day, I have an almost nonstop conversation with God. Now, how I pray corporately and how I pray quietly while everything else is going on around me are two different things.
Sure, yeah.
God knows who I am, so I don't have to think in the... I don't have to think the same way I would in a corporate prayer. He knows who I am. I'm personal with him. The conversation is much like conversation I have with you.
Yeah.
And we build that relationship. And I don't know how to explain how he speaks to me, but I know that he does.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things of you have to practice it. And if you wait until you're in a critical situation to practice it, it's too late to know who you're listening to.
Yeah.
This is not the direction I thought we would go, but
This
I
is
think it was
really
good.
This is unexpected, but I think it ended in a really good direction here.
Absolutely.
So let's call it there. And so, guys, if you are not talking with God, talk with Him conversationally. He's your father. He's your husband. He is the man the being that cares more about you than anybody else. Talk to Him every day, everywhere you go, and then try to listen to His voice. See you guys next week. Blessings on y'all.